All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's quite exciting to have yet another KAPAL event. My name is Jake Hostetler, so I'm a board member at KAPAL. And this event is an exciting one. So we're talking about the U.S. laboratory landscape, introduction and some recent trends in U.S. laboratories for pharma, biotech, and healthcare startups. And we've got some tremendous speakers for you today. Ready to go, and I think it'll be a really great event. So I hope you're able to get some networking in. Just so you know, there are some refreshments and snacks in the back if you want to go back there and grab something just to, hold yourself over through the talks. But yeah, this should be a great session altogether. And if I could just advance the slide, that would be great. So in any case, this event is, we have a number of sponsors for this, including the the Korean Council in LA sponsoring this, as well as Kitty and KAPAL. Oh, there we go. Okay, so our program today, we have our in-person networking event that we just did. Going to be the mediator today just to introduce our speakers, as well as help move the entire event along. We'll have some opening remarks. We may come back to those depending on who's present. And then we'll start off with, I'll introduce our first speaker, and then we'll have 3 speakers today in total talking about, like I said, different aspects of the U.S. laboratory landscape and some of the advantages and strategies we could employ to effectively maneuver that landscape. And then finally, we'll move into a panel discussion and a Q&A. So it'll be your chance to really engage with them, ask any questions you have, and finally finish out with some closing remarks. So. And if at any time, you have any questions or anything, just approach one of the board members or anyone else, and we'll be happy to help you out. Like I said, we have some really great hosts in the Consulate General of Korea in LA, as well as Kitty. And then our organizers here, we are KAPAL CA, or KAPAL CA. So we're the California branch of KAPAL, Korean American Professional Association in Life Sciences. So we try to host events like this roughly once a quarter right now to drum up and bolster the ecosystem, the life science ecosystem in the Southern California region. So anytime you're interested in becoming a part of this or engaging in more events, we're more than happy to have those discussions. And we ourselves are also very interested always in networking and growing our presence in that space. So I'm gonna try to advance this one more time. Maybe if you guys could just help me out. Yeah, so no, okay. So we're gonna skip ahead of this right now. So we were gonna have some opening remarks from Youngwon Kim, but I believe maybe he's been held up. So we're gonna move ahead from there and keep going. And I believe we have a virtual call-in from Byung-ha Lee, the president of KAPAL.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello? Everybody can hear me?
So maybe while we're waiting, I'll just add that we like to host these events at Bioscience LA, and we're really thankful to the Bioscience LA team for allowing us to be here in this space and use it. They're an ecosystem builder that works with a lot of life science companies throughout Southern California and frankly the country to bring an awareness about the growing space that is Los Angeles and the opportunities that abound here. So actually, the CEO Dave Whalen is sitting here right now and is able to be with us for a little bit today. So we're excited about this, and we're very good friends with Dave and his team. So if you get a chance while he's here, do connect with him or just come to the biosciencela.org page and learn more about what the organization is. They're very good at what they do, very good at connecting and helping companies that are looking to grow their presence in this area, whether it's the biotech/life science industry or Southern California in general. So that's certainly something to be said. How many of you guys here are locals to the Southern California area? Okay, great, perfect. So that being said, now we expect you to be at more of these events in the future. We've set the expectation. Okay, I think. Youngwon, would you want to give your opening remarks? Yeah. Yeah. No, it's okay. We understand. We're happy to have you.
So I have a very short prepared text. Yeah. It is broadcasted via online, right? Right. So there is a camera. Right? Okay. So you can see I work with a limb. I have a difficulty in mobility. So it's really nice to be out here after 2 months of living with clutches and casting. 2 months ago, I got an accident and got a surgery with my left ankle. Today is my first day to be out to attend such a gathering without clutches, which indicates how much importance today's seminar carries to me and to my office, the consulate. I'm very much honored to give a welcoming remark at the beginning of the seminar. Welcome everybody who participate in the seminar in person and virtually. Though it seems a bit cliche and classic, I'd like to start my short remarks by recognizing KAPAL's effort and role in facilitating cooperation in the areas of life science among Korean American professionals and between Korea and the United States. It has been instrumental in promoting exchanges of knowledge and experience among Korean American professionals in the life science industry, academia and research institute. It has also been contributing to developing young scientists to ensure their future success and contribution to the life science. Taking this opportunity, I extend my gratitude to the president of KAPAL, Dr. Lee Byung-ha, and the KAPAL president in California, Mr. Kim Hyun-jong, for their continued endeavors. I also thank both of you for making today's event possible. Thank you very much. This year is very special for Korea-US relations for 2 reasons. Number one, this year marks the 120th anniversary of the arrival of the first Korean immigration into the United States. Since then, our community and Korean Americans with our unique identity has enriched the US society and culture and contributed our talent and energy to the growth and prosperity of the United States. And I believe the field of life science has not been any exception. Number two, this year we celebrate the 70th anniversary of signing of Korea-US Mutual Defense Treaty. What started as purely military alliance has blossomed into a global strategic partnership in collaborating in economy, technology, culture, and personal exchanges. In this process, US innovation and technology has inspired many Korean scientists and entrepreneurs to break barriers in tapping their potentials. Biohealth industry is one of key areas the US innovative spirits and advances encourage the Korean companies to blaze its trail. Now, next month, we expect the South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol make a state visit to DC. And more cooperation of life sciences, biohealth area will be added to the agenda of our future partnership. But let me reiterate some languages for the joint statement agreed upon the last year's President Biden's visit to Korea. I quote, "The US and ROK will strengthen health system and build on successful health sector collaboration to accelerate cooperation and innovation, such as in cancer research, cutting-edge cancer treatment, mental health research, early detection and treatment of mental health disorders." As President Biden emphasized, Korea and the United States are a nation that is all about possibilities, endless possibilities. And the possibilities are a commitment to an innovation. In this vein, I believe today's seminar is particularly timely and relevant, as the laboratories represent the technical foundation of research and development, as well as the growth of bio and healthcare startups. And today's event will provide an excellent opportunity to showcase the latest trend in various types of laboratories in the United States, especially at a time when many Korean companies and Korean bio workers are actively entering into American markets. Furthermore, I hope that today's seminar will also serve as a valuable platform for networking and then building new collaboration among the participants. On a final note, I would like to thank once again to two presidents of KAPAL for their hard works bringing these difficult things together, and all of attendants for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General Kim. That was really well said. And I, as a non-Korean who's engaged a lot with Koreans, I can attest to that. The Koreans are amazing. The community is so robust and amazing. So very well said and very true. I believe we have the audio connection now for our next speaker, President of KAPAL.
Hello, this is Byung-ha. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you very much. So I can see everyone can hear me. Yeah, sorry about the hiccup for the technical difficulties. And this is Byung-ha Lee. I'm currently serving as a KAPAL president. And first of all, I would like to thank all the participants and the speakers for our first webinar and in-person meeting in 2023 and hosted by KAPAL California. And especially, I would like to thank Mr. Young-Wan Kim, LA 총영사관님, Consul General of the Republic of Korea in LA, and Mr. Sun-man Park, Chief Representative, KIRI USA, for their continuous support to the KAPAL. So let me shortly introduce about the KAPAL, as you are well aware of it. KAPAL is the federal and the state registered nonprofit organization since 2017. Our mission is to promote the exchange of the knowledge and experiences among the Korean American professionals in the life science industry and all the sectors related. And so far since 2017, we organized multiple events. And last year, we had two webinars, more than two webinars, and one network meeting, and one in-person annual conferences. And for this year, we will host also 3 more webinars and 3 more in-person bioforum, and the conferences are on the plan right now. So this is the short summary of what we had last year, as well as the 6th KAPAL annual conferences from November 17 to 18 in Gaithersburg and Marriott Washingtonian Center. So our pre-registration is 158, and almost 200 participants came to the annual conferences, and we had some of the milestone that having an MOU with the KPBMA in Korea. And as you can see from here on the bottom right, KAPAL and the KAPAL CA, all the committee members getting together for these annual conferences as well. And this is the sponsor for our KAPAL partners and the sponsors of KAPAL in 2002. And also in 2023, we will continue our relationship on moving on. And this is the committee member, key committee member in KAPAL, mainly located in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. And this is the KAPAL California Executive Committee who greatly are preparing this great event today. So I'd like to thank all the KAPAL Executive Committee and members in every area. And the last but not the least, this is these members that are really important advisors for the KAPAL community. So if you want to know about KAPAL more, and also if you continue to receiving more like the great news, please follow our like the Facebook or LinkedIn page. This is the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for the opportunity, and also I hope you enjoyed today's meeting as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. So I think with that excellent introduction to what KAPAL is, we can move now into our, back please. Our first presentation today. It's actually a colleague of mine, Louis Sintasat. He's our Senior Director of Business Development at Emerald Cloud Lab. Full disclosure, I also work for Emerald Cloud Lab, but I'm also a part of KAPAL. So as a member of, or as a part of this topic discussion, it fit with the scope to talk about what cloud laboratories are, and specifically elevating science with cloud laboratories. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite Louis to come on up and present to you all.
Great, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here to speak with you. Just a little bit of background on myself. I come from a research background, neuroscience undergrad, and then I went to grad school in biomedical sciences at UCSD. Went into sales and business development, went back and got my MBA at Rady, UCSD as well. And we wanted to talk about Emerald Cloud Lab, but also just in general about what cloud labs are. It's kind of a new concept for a lot of people. So this is going to sound like, something futuristic thing, but it's actually a reality now. So this is a picture of Emerald Cloud Lab in San Francisco. That's where we started. We're currently in the process of moving the lab from a 10,000 square feet, 14,000 square feet facility to a 100,000 square feet facility in Austin, Texas. Where we'll have a lot more space, a lot more equipment to work with. So let's start off. What is a cloud lab? So this term was actually coined by Stephen Wolfram, who is the creator of Mathematica, along with our co-founder, Brian Frezza, in 2011. This is to help separate out who we are as a cloud lab versus other labs that are just doing automation and incremental innovation. So basically, a cloud lab is a physical laboratory where scientists from across the world can actually access through the internet, design their experiments and run their experiments with the same level of control they would get in a traditional lab without actually stepping foot into a lab. There are 5 things that you need for this to be successful, and I'll just go through them quickly. You'll need to have remote on-demand experimentation. So, scientists need to have access to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and be able to only use that interface to design their experiments. They don't need to then have to, communicate it, try to adjust or fix the machine, things like that. It needs to be fully remotely operational. And on that front, it needs to be able to allow customers to fully define their experiments, because with every experiment, there's all these different variables, and the system needs to be able to accommodate for that so that it's not just one size fits all. And so they would have that flexibility as if they were standing in front of the machine. In order to achieve this, of course, you need to have a full range, comprehensive list of equipment, right, to be able to do this. We have over 240 different types of equipment in our facility to be able to handle everything from sample preparation downstream to analysis. And on that, the sample preparation piece of it is critical. And you need to be able to handle all types of samples that come into a facility, right? You're talking about from liquids to solids, different scales, and the lab needs to be able to handle all that, as well as be able to store these samples in the particular environment indefinitely until, you know, the samples are needed for experimentation. And then finally, the critical piece is that there needs to be one software interface to be able to control everything for the entire lab. And so what we have developed is this interface that is the same language that controls hundreds of pieces of equipment. So you don't need to learn the interface of one machine and then the interface of another machine. With this one language, it can control all the different platforms as well as do the analysis as well. So last month, the consulting company, McKinsey & Company, came out with an article talking about from bench to bedside, transforming R&D through automation. So one of the things that they were discussing was the fact that from 2001 to 2019, the amount of R&D spending doubled, but yet the amount of developed drugs only increased incrementally. In order to be able to realize the potential of precision medicine and even just development of drugs, there needs to be an efficiency that you take into account to be able to help achieve this dream. And in order to do that, they're arguing about automation, right? So in terms of being able to automate, do things quickly, reduce kind of the errors. And in order to do that, there was also going to be a layer of software interfaces that need to occur. And so I put that in the slide here for you to see. So then that's where Emerald Cloud Lab steps in, right? So what do Cloud Labs do and how they operate? So scientists can then ship us the samples where then accessioning will occur, different sample types, sample preparation occurs. There's also situations where customers want to say, I want to synthesize oligos, I want to synthesize proteins. They can utilize the synthesizers in the lab, so they don't have to send any samples. They can then have downstream, then move to say HPLC for purification, quantification, things like that. So after that, they design it on an interface. With the push of a button, they can run the experiments, and then it would run off, and it would run the experiments without them needing to be there. So Fridays is usually the busiest time of the day because everyone's trying to line up their experiments so they can go home and not worry about it. And then Monday, they'll have data to analyze. The other aspect is be able to collect and organize the data. So not only primary data, but there's all this other information, all this other metadata that is collected as well. And in further slides, I'll talk a little bit more about it. That's kind of critical, that's needed to be able to achieve automation. And then ultimately, there's a centralized command center to be able to then have that data come in, be able to do the analysis right there in the same software platform. So as we talk about trying to automate the lab, for the future, we need to take a step back and kind of look at the different levels of automation. And so we'll just talk briefly about that. Along with it is looking at all the different types of data, not just the primary data, but the metadata that comes out of it that you need to be aware of. And then ultimately to be able to then provide this closed loop experimentation and how we can achieve that. So that's going to be the ultimate level of automation. So starting with no automation, right? We're talking about manual sample prep, manually handling all of that. When you step in and do the first level of automation, we're talking about, okay, maybe we'll bring in a Hamilton liquid handler that will then do kind of the sample prep part of it. Or maybe we'll have another machine for HPLC, but they're kind of independent, right, of each other. And then further on for data analysis as well. When you get into the next level, a semi-automated experiment where, okay, I'm going to link, sample prep and then the downstream instrumentation. The one connective tissue with that is a scientist that actually has to take that sample and transfer it to the next machine, right? This is where the critical step, this is a critical leap that needs to happen for automation to occur, right? You need to remove that scientist from the equation so that they can then be able to design their experiments, put them together, hit run, and then it would work. So that connectivity is critical for the automation piece. And then the other piece is reproducibility, right? So once you have this automation, you want to be able to do it over and over again, but are you actually getting the same data coming out of it? So one of the questions is, how reproducible is the data that you're talking about? And I'll give you an example of that. So here is a protocol that's found in Journal of American Chemistry. It's talking about single nucleotide polymorphism analysis. And in the protocol, it's just saying that, okay, 18 microliters of slurry of a 7.5 micromolar solid phase translator, blah, 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 is needed, and you follow this protocol. There's so much other information that's not specified that's kind of taken for granted, right? So can you really replicate what they did here? Based on this, and what we're trying to say is there's so much more information that you would need to know in order to fully be able to say, I can automate this and I can reproduce it by click of a button. And so when you look at this, there's so much other information, right? So the slurry that you're talking about, well, how was that generated? Was it through agitation? The solid phase that you have, what is the resin type in there? There's no information on that. What are the storage conditions? For the ID buffer, well, how was that prepared? How was the storage condition of that? How long was that there? So there's all this other information that's surrounding the experiment that we define in the process. And it's translated into the language, into the code. So you know exactly what's going on. So we even have a situation where, you can identify, well, I need this buffer, but I don't have it. But you know what? I'm going to indicate that this needs to be made, and it'll be made on demand so that it's done in this concentration, is generated, and then in real time gets put into the experiment and only the amount that's needed is created because you defined how much volume you need and so forth. So in this level 3 of automation, we're talking about an automated sample handling prep, let's say, or if you're talking about solid pieces that you need to chip off pieces of it, that needs to be done on a manual level. But anyways, you can include it into a stream where then you have the instrumentation followed by the data analysis as well. And that needs to be incorporated in and not be a separate step. Because when you're talking about the data that you're getting, it's not, the primary data that you're getting is just a piece of it, right? There's also this other metadata around it. What is it? Or what is the pressure? Additional analysis, right? The logs of it, the ambient temperature, sample volume. And so for us, we collect all this information in the process. So say, for example, here with this tube, there's a barcode. So when it's time to open this tube, the barcode gets scanned. We know how long that tube is open for and exposed to the air and when it gets closed out. That's stored as metadata so that you can then incorporate that into your analysis and say, okay, well, this sample may have been exposed for too long. The temperature may have been different, things like that for you to help. And that's where we bring in like artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to help incorporate in the analysis piece. So let me just give you an example. So here is a liquid handling for the Hamilton Star, where we measure not only just, utilizing the liquid handler, we measure the pressure for the aspiration. So when you look here, the pressure is 0. In order to aspirate and draw up the liquid, the pressure drops, and then it stops, and then it holds, and the pressure comes back up. And then to dispense, you start with 0 pressure, and then you dispense the liquid, the pressure goes up, and then it peaks, at which point it drops, and then pushes out the remaining amount of liquid so that okay, that's a full dispense. So when this happens, sometimes things don't go according to plan, but you're talking about an automated system where you're doing it in plate level. You can look at scans and say, oh, okay, well, that's a normal run. That's a normal run. This one, maybe there's an air bubble here that's causing this weird scan. Maybe there's no sample here at all. That's why it's 0. And using machine learning, we can then incorporate that and identify which we consider as success, which we consider as failure. Incorporate that back into the analysis to help further define the experiment and have correct analysis versus seeing a failure or seeing a different result and not knowing what to do with it. On the fourth level is you're talking about full automation. So where I'm going to play here an example, different experiments that are being run, whether it's PCR, whether it's Westerns. And here you have the kind of the image of the lab and where one machine is, and after it's done, it gets moved to another facility, another part of the facility. You can see as the complicated piece of it as things expand and more runs are happening at the same time. We've learned through this process that it's having machines together in one section is not necessarily the most efficient way, right? We learned from Amazon that because of the sequence and where things are going, sometimes you have to optimally place them in different areas so that there's not a traffic jam. And so we actually do a lot of analysis and look into kind of how Amazon does their storage and their automated process. And then here is kind of an example where scientists can then transfer new methods to ECL. We'll be able to then combine these number of experiments, string them together. So in this example, you can see here where one, the code is, okay, samples are going to ship to ECL. Two, using the liquid handler, aliquots will be created. This is going to be a stability analysis. So it's going to look at different temperature conditions at the time. So then samples will then need to go into particular environmental chambers. So they do that and then downstream analysis to be able to analyze that. And then on the level 5, here's the ultimate level, bringing in artificial intelligence and machine learning to be able to then close the loop in the experimentation so that it allows a scientist to just focus in on the research and not on the minutia of actually the little details of the experiments, right? So over time, this will help kind of guide the direction of the research. So for example, there's a target that you want to, maximize peak separation on HPLC. There's different variables you're looking at, whether it's gradient concentration, column temperature, column type. And then what you do is you integrate this machine learning to explore the parameters of each of these conditions to make better decisions on how to then design your next experiments and reach your goal. And then, this is, I think, the last slide anyways, the unique features of ECL. So as I mentioned, all the different pieces of data is collected. It's organized in, we call constellation, where you can look at all of your primary data, but then all the other data that's associated with it. Scientists can then fully define their protocols. We help set that up, make sure that the instruction is very clear and not ambiguous. Script it together and be able to use logic in the scripted to be able to run your experiments. And that is it. So any questions? Hold it in. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Louis. Perfect. Great job. Awesome. Thank you, Louis. Awesome job. So our next speaker, Rami Dueri. Yes, he's a lab director for BioLabs USA, and he's going to talk to us about incubating labs and the specific benefits they have to startups. So, Rami, please.
안녕하세요. My name is Rami Dueri. I am the lab director at BioLabs LA. Briefly about me, I had my master's in cancer biology, then came from Lebanon to here to do my PhD in virology. I didn't work on coronavirus. Then I did my postdoc at the NIH working on HIV vaccines, and I did not discover one. So I went and worked with a nonprofit organization right across the street. And later on, I found this position, and I've been the lab director for the past 2 years. So I guess this is the last slide, actually. So my presentation is the benefit of incubator labs to startups and more. And what do I mean by more? You do not have to be always a startup company to go to an incubator lab. You can be probably a company that is looking for. So you might be a company that is looking for doing some research. You might be a company that is abroad. So you might be a company that is abroad and you're trying to find a space for some business development, or you have equipments, you want to bring people to train on these equipments. So an incubator space can still help you in that. So what is an incubator space? It provides shared workspace, resources, and support to early stage biotechnology companies. And they typically offer office space, laboratory space, equipment, access to mentors, investors, and some of them also provide funding. Sorry. The benefits to you is that this is a great place to network. You are going to be with like-minded people. You have scientists, you have CEOs, you have investors. You get to meet with them and expand your network, which is going to be very useful, especially if you're just starting into entrepreneurship. Mentorship. You trust me, you're not the only person who's going through a hard time. If you're a startup company, these people already went through these things. They can really help you in finding out how you can solve your problems. Discuss with them science, discuss with them how you can get funding, how you can get some certifications, FDA, CLIA certifications, all of these things. And it creates a reduced risk, because when you go to an incubator space, you do not have to invest a lot of money into building your own lab. So, in case you fail, you didn't waste a lot of money. In case you succeed, then you can, take that money and build even a bigger facility. And the same thing goes for the investors. They're investing money. They don't want to spend a lot of money until you build up your lab. And then maybe you're going to fail, maybe you're going to succeed, but there's a big cost to doing the lab. And we'll talk more about it. You succeed quickly, that's great. You fail quickly, they lost not a lot of money. So what should you consider when you're looking for an incubator space? And I guess this is probably like the most important slide. First of all, you need to know what your company needs. Then what is the incubator space offering? So they have the space. Is it just a warehouse, go work? Or, hey, we have this space, we have these benches, we have these equipments, and you can use them. Are they providing you with funding? Some places don't. Biolabs doesn't provide funding, but some places will provide funding, but they will get equity of your company. Do you want this? Yes or no? The work environment, I guess, is very important. Besides the company culture, the work environment is, when you go to that incubator, is it in a not so safe area? Can you find parking easily? Are the people working there helpful, courteous to you, or they just don't care if you succeed or not? Waste management. We're in California, which is a strict state. If you do not know how to manage your waste, especially chemical waste and biological waste, you're gonna be fined and waste a lot of money on legal issues. You definitely, incubator spaces that manage your waste will really help you, and Biolabs does manage waste. Compliance. So you have OSHA compliance and other regulatory compliances. You do not want to mess with the government. This is how you're going to lose money, and you're going to be shut down and lose a lot of time. So spaces that have OSHA compliances, that's great. The same thing for if you want to do biological research, you want to make sure that you have biosafety level compliance. You cannot be working with certain viruses if you do not have a facility to work with them, certain DNA vectors. These are guidelines by the NIH. So does the incubator manage these things, or you have to manage them and spend money to get people to tell you what you have to do? The equipment access and use of equipment. Some incubators do not have equipment. Some have limited equipments that are for their own agenda. So for example, Illumina wants you to use their sequencing technique and machines and stay within the Illumina sequencers. So yeah, maybe they're not gonna let you go if you do not want to use sequencing, but other places, they have a lot of equipment and you can use any equipment that you want. Do they provide training for your employees, and can be for equipment, but also you have some OSHA. We go back to regulations, OSHA regulations. You have to do bloodborne pathogens if you're working in a biological lab, electrical safety. Do you have to provide these, pay for them, or the incubators taking care of them? Access to partners, and we'll talk more about it, and purchasing assistance. And purchasing is a big thing. Do you want to have to create your own company and then go create accounts with companies? Have someone on the payroll just so they can bill correctly and manage these things? Or do you want the incubator to manage also your purchasing? And Biolabs does manage the purchasing. So what is Biolabs? I said Biolabs several times. Biolabs is more than just lab space. What our CEO, Johannes, said, that it is our mission to empower entrepreneurs and to accelerate science innovation worldwide. Biolabs is built by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. He's an entrepreneur. He started several companies similar to Biolabs, Lab Central Biolabs, and one of them is Cambridge Labs, where if you heard of this company, I don't know, that made the vaccines for COVID. There's Pfizer and the other, Moderna. Yes, sorry. Moderna started in one of our labs, but in one of Biolabs. So Biolabs is the largest network of startup incubators. We started in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We have several sites on the East Coast. We have sites on the West Coast, in Dallas. We recently opened 3 sites in Europe. So we have 2 in France, 1 in Germany, and we have a site in Japan with in partnership with Econem. The nice thing, when people are members of Biolabs, you are a member of LA, but you have to travel to Dallas to meet some investors or meet other companies. You can go to any Biolabs facility and use one of the conference rooms for free. Biolabs manages more than 200,000 square feet across all our network. We have more than 220 companies, and we have more than $100 million invested into improving our lab in terms of equipment, in terms of events, in terms of assistance to the residents. And you might ask me, what are your residents working on? Because we do not have a specific mission, like some of the incubator spaces where they want only therapeutics or only cancer, we have people working on everything. Lab-grown meat, we have companies working on it. Cat genomics, people work on it. Cancer, immunology, everything. You're going to find someone along the network that you can collaborate with. And it's not just collaboration. You can ask for help, assistance, mentorship. And so because of this vast network, Biolabs had very important economical impact in the cities where they're located. And I'm giving you here some examples where at Ipsen Center, which is in also Massachusetts, residents raised more than $2 billion in investment. In Philadelphia, they had 67 patents issued. And Tufts, which is also in Massachusetts, they had 3 companies that filed for IPOs. And you can see how much money these companies have raised and how much jobs they've added. So it doesn't just provide space, but it's also helping the local economy to grow. And how do we guarantee that we have a successful company coming? So first of all is evaluating the team that is working. And you say team, is it important? It is a marriage. If you have a good marriage, you have a good company. If you do not have a good marriage between the CEO, the CFO, the CSO, all of these, people like these names, it's not going to work. There will be clashes. So we try to evaluate this when we interview them. We check the quality of their science, their business model, their market potential. And if we see that these companies are fit, we allow them to come. And that's why we have actually one of the highest success rate among companies, among incubators. And I'm giving you here 2 examples. Aqueous, they were purchased by Eli Lilly. for about $200 million. And Pyxis, they are doing collaborations with Pfizer. But I don't know, have you guys heard of Colossal Biosciences? They're trying to bring back the woolly mammoth. So this is a big company. They appeared on news. They're trying to bring back the mammoth. Yes, the extinct big elephant. They're bringing it back. The Tasmanian devil, and they are located in Dallas, in our biolabs in Dallas. If anyone here likes cats, okay, if you don't like cats, that's fine. But there's a company that does cat genomics. They appeared on Shark Tank, the show. They got funding from them. And recently they were purchased by Zoetis, which is the leading manufacturer of veterinary medicine. They are in Biolabs LA. And actually their office is next to where your office was. So what makes a company success? How can Biolabs help? First of all, we evaluate the science. But also Biolabs has a lot of collaboration with some of the premium science organizations like Tufts, Lundquist Institute, where we are located. We have supportive tech licensing offices practice. So in case a company needs to file for intellectual property, we do have lawyers that can help. Diverse talent base, and this is where we try to be located, in areas with hotbed of bioscience, or even people who work within biolabs are highly trained to help companies in their day-to-day needs. Lab space and functionality, I'll talk more about it. Industry support, I'm going to talk more about it. Knowledgeable venture capital, so residents have access to venture capital, and supportive policy plus cultural environment, where we try to create a nice environment. We had companies, that folded and they had to lay off their employees, and the employees were actually sad because they were leaving the place, not leaving the company. So that's, at this station, you need a good work environment. So when I talked about access to sponsors or access to collaborators, this is a list of our collaborators and sponsors, and these are some of the leading biotechnology companies. I'm not going to go through the full names, but we had 3 companies within Biolabs that were acquired by Thermo Fisher, Boehringer Ingelheim, and GSK. So, being close to these companies, where these companies have access to you, can help your research become, commercialize it. It's not just sitting there and waiting for someone to come and commercialize your research. So how Biolabs can help when we said lab flexibility? First thing is because we manage a lot of the administrative things. So everything about environmental health safety, OSHA regulations within the lab, that can help you to focus on doing your research, not on doing operations. And this will save you a lot of money. Imagine you're going to have to hire 2-3 people to do purchasing, to do EHS, OSHA, and you're already 2 people only doing the research. How can you afford hiring 1 or 2 more people? So by the incubator space or Biolabs managing this, they're saving you money. So you have decreased startup time. You do not have to manage all of these regulations to start. You can just apply and start soon. So you save time. And we have flexible lab space. So you do not have to sign a 5-10-year contract. You just sign a 1 month-to-month contract. You need, next month you're growing, you want 5 more benches, you can get them. You, for whatever reason, you want to remove 2-3 benches with a month notice, you downsize. So very flexible to save you money, while we know that startups have the money is the major factor. And this is an example. Let's say you have a company of 10 people and you want to start a space. And I guess some of you here already started their own space. So these numbers might talk to you very well. Lab for about 10 people, and you're going to be spending about $2.5 million for about a year just to set it up. Find a location, get a company to adjust the space, get all the piping, all the electrical, all the equipments. You're going to have to hire someone to make sure you're buying the right equipment, putting them in space, testing them, making sure all the regulation, all the permits are done. And you haven't done any science You're just spending money at this time. And this is a full year. We know that within a year, people can advance their research and scoop your research, and then that's it. You cannot get even intellectual property rights or licensing. Within biolabs, because we have all of this infrastructure, you just have to come, bring yourself and start doing the research. For about 10 people space, it's gonna cost you even less than $120,000. And you start working immediately and you're generating data. So you have 20 times cost reduction just by going to an incubator space. So to grow, Biolabs offers flexible on-demand lab and office space, state-of-the-art premium lab equipment, concierge level operating services. So, where people are helping you, and programming and event curation. So every week, actually, we do have people who come from our sponsor talking about their technology. So Biolabs LA, we were established in 2019. We have 18,000 square feet. Just by companies growing, they drove the demand for real estate within the LA area. We have developed the ecosystem through, our sponsors are sponsoring a lot of the events that are happening within the region. We have partnership with a lot of companies within California or, other states. And we're planning an expansion hopefully in the next few years where we're gonna double our size. So we offer $2 million worth of equipment that the residents use for free. So there's no extra cost. The facility is open 24/7. We have access to core facilities at our partner, the Lancus Institute, with about $1 million. We have access to vivarium if you need to do any animal studies. You can either have office or both lab and office space, access to sponsors and partnership with the Lancus Institute. The Lancus Institute, this is our space. Our lab is, let's see, that's the laser. So that's the second floor here. This is our space, the whole place. The Lancus Institute has been around for 70 years. They are a leader in innovation, and they have a lot of FDA drugs and medical equipments. They have a lot of investigators. They are very active in research and publications. They work on these 9 different research focuses. And the building on the right is our current building. The building on the left is a building that they're planning, and hopefully it will be soon. I don't have a time frame, but this is going to be the next nice building on campus. With this, I thank you very much. And we'll take your questions later.
Awesome. Thanks, Rami. That was excellent. All right. I believe our next speaker is going to be calling in virtually to present. His name is Matthew Brady. He's a principal and executive vice president at Shear Partners, and he's going to be talking to us about CLIA labs and successful lab business planning. So you guys just let me know when you're ready to switch over and I'll stop talking.
Okay, great to be here. Honored to talk with everyone. Let me know if you can hear me okay.
And we are scheduled for a short break after this session, just so you guys want to plan ahead.
All right, let me know if everybody can hear me okay. Just a thumbs up will let me know if my audio is coming through.
Yes.
Great, thank you. All right, wonderful to be here. Great to talk with everyone. Thank you for including us in this important discussion. We're really excited to talk about real estate as a follow-on to the last presentation, Rami gave a great overview of the incubators, and this is sort of the next steps after that. And so what we're really focused on is the growth mode of establishing a footprint, call it springboard space, growth through that medium stage, and then even beyond. And so just to give you a little background on me, my name again is Matt Brady. I'm a executive vice president and principal at Shear Partners. Shear Partners is a unique real estate firm in that we have a specialization in scientific spaces. We've been doing this for over 30 years, and I've been with the company for 20 of that. You can see just some quick facts. We've done over 500 scientific transactions, more than 12 million square feet and $3 billion worth of transactional volume. We've worked with just about every kind of scientific company you could think of that requires facilities. And so this is a brief sampling of several of the companies that we've worked with in the recent past. They really have all the functionalities that you would imagine in a scientific space, everything from basic R&D lab, diagnostic labs, heavy chem environments. We have animals requirements, as well as the other end of the spectrum with GMP compliant manufacturing spaces. And we work on everything from the smallest incubator spaces where you're just running a bench all the way through to major corporate campuses. And so we're very passionate about this type of space and excited that we get to share a little bit with you. So just jumping in. First thing we wanted to address, and again, this is kind of a follow-on to the last presentation. It's really that lab space is not everywhere. Lab space is really located in a major way in several locations across the United States. Not to say that there isn't lab space in other places. These pins in the map just represent the major concentrations, the hubs, if you will. And even within those established hubs, we find a hierarchy. Boston and San Francisco are by far the largest of those hubs. And then the second tier are everything else that you see on this map. Each one has its own unique characteristics and availability, but it also has some pricing implications as well. And so to give you some sense of where each of these price out, we thought putting together a chart here to show where they are on the market costs comparison. We actually included a few that aren't on that map, including Houston and Chicago. But you can see that the most expensive markets right now from an average cost of lab space are really so the slide that's showing right now is just evidence of our experience in the scientific space. And so there again, 500 lab transactions, over $3 billion in transactional value, and over 12 million square feet in actual transactional activity. Okay, so again, we cover the full spectrum of scientific companies. This is just a sampling of some of the recent transactions that we've helped clients work through in various stages of growth and functionality. So on this list, there's diagnostic labs, R&D labs. There are some heavy chemical users. There's vivariums for CROs. And there's also some GMP compliant manufacturing spaces that we've done on behalf of our clients. So then next slide, please. Okay, great. It looks like we're in sync. So the next slide after this is the map that I was discussing. So as a follow-on, you can see that it's really bi-coastal. It's on the east and west coast of the US. Each of these pins represents a strong concentration, a hub of laboratories. And not to say again that the other states that aren't highlighted don't have those capabilities or don't have laboratory spaces, but these are just the most preeminent hubs. These are where you're more likely to find it. An existing supply or landlords that'll provide the means to building it. And again, you have a hierarchy of space here. Boston and San Francisco are the top markets in terms of total square footage of lab space. But you also have a kind of this second tier, which is all the other pins that are located here. And each of these has a strong concentration as well. Just to give you some rough numbers, the Boston market is roughly about 30 million square feet right now, where the Maryland market and Research Triangle Park markets, those are more like 9 to 10 million square feet. The other differentiator is really the cost. And so we put together this chart to show you how each of these markets stack up in terms of average cost of rental rate. And so Boston and San Francisco, you can see are clearly ahead of most of the others. San Diego, also on the West Coast, isn't far off, and then Seattle behind that. Then it drops pretty quickly. And you apply this to the top tier of the markets, you can get quickly into $100 per square foot in Boston and San Francisco, where the top tier in Philadelphia, Maryland, and RTP are closer to the 60 to, well, I'll call it $40 to $60 range. And so depending on what your motivators are and what your budget, and we'll get into that here in a second, you can see how it might be more advantageous from a cost standpoint to look at other markets other than Boston and San Francisco. But if some of your major drivers, including capital, talent, or technology, come from Boston or San Francisco, it might make sense to pay the premium to be there. And as I mentioned before, we actually included a couple other markets that weren't on our map with Houston and Chicago. So you can see those there at the end. I wanted to touch on the process that we work through to evaluate our clients' needs. And I don't want to go into too much detail here, but just want to help everyone think through how to best locate your facility. Really, it starts with a vision on the front end, and that's that define stage on the far left, where we try and, as best we can, determine the long-term goals of the company, whether it's growth or acquisition, or maybe it's yet to be determined, but that will help to shape the rest of the steps. And included in that are the functionalities that you'll need in the headcount. Those are the two major drivers in any scientific transaction. From there, we evaluate the market. We bring on strategic partners such as construction managers, architects, engineers, people that have an expertise with labs and with scientific spaces. Because one thing that you'll find very quickly is that this is not a common expertise. And so it's important that you seek out those vendors that have good experience previously with this. In terms of if we could go back to that previous slide, thank you. And then obviously the next three steps, you really want to validate all of everything that you're finding in the market. You want to negotiate to the best of your ability, depending on what type of space you're looking for, the amount of time that you can be in it. And then finally, you get into a lease, a design, and potentially presentation to your board as the finalization process completes. Next slide, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, we're really following on with the incubator discussion here. Those incubators serve a vital role in how the company can grow in the United States. These are speculatively built, and generally modifications can be difficult. They're generally built with a very broad functional base to them. You can typically immediately occupy them. So there's very little wait time. And in most cases, the documentation to come to an agreement for occupancy is pretty easy. Also, they don't obligate you to stay for a long time. As we get into these next phases of growth, you'll find that the terms are much longer. And so the flexible length of term, in some cases, we've seen it as short as a month or 2 months. But we can also see it as long as a couple years if needed. And then, as Rami discussed, the potential for shared equipment is something that can be a real benefit to young companies. Having even fundamental equipment there for day one, as opposed to having to acquire that, especially in a tight supply chain market, can be a real plus moving forward. The next phase of growth is coming out of that incubator. And this is where my role as a real estate agent comes into play. And this is where that process that we just discussed is far more applicable, where now you're looking at either speculatively built, they call them spec suites, that are various sizes and functionalities, but generally they're built to an R&D type of standard. And so if you wanted to modify that into a clinical environment, there's usually easy ways to do that, or a diagnostic type environment. And depending on the amount of modifications that you need, the occupancy generally takes somewhere between 3 to 9 months, with a majority of that time being the actual modifications that need to take place in the space. With these types of spaces, you're most likely to see somewhere around a 5-year term. In some cases, you can find a 3-year term, but it's good to plan to at least a 5-year term unless you can find some sort of sublease or flexible arrangement. And as you grow into this phase, it's anticipated that the tenant will bring almost all of their equipment. There will be very little, if any, shared equipment, with the exception of things like autoclave, glass wash, and maybe ice maker, which are shared amongst a lot of the tenants in these speculatively built lab suites. The next stage is really moving into a more mature growth. And so what you see there are the ability to take advantage of maybe a second generation lab space, or you can build your own space. And we'll talk in just a second about what the costs associated with building lab space in today's market are. But both of these have application depending on what type of functionalities you need, how large the space needs to be, and also if location and aesthetics, the way the space looks, are important. Those are all good reasons to build your own space. You can see that the occupancy takes much longer in this case, 6 to 18 months. And we'll break this down in some detail here shortly. And because of the financing elements that go into building this space, we usually see an 8-year term or longer in this type of structure. In almost all cases, the tenant will provide all of the equipment for these. Thank you. So as promised, here's the timeline. You can see this is roughly about 18 months, and I apologize for the scale of this. We tried to take what's a very complicated process in some cases and simplify it as much as possible for the purpose of this slide deck. And so you can see how we've talked about a lot of these steps on the front end, where you're working through the market, what all that has to offer. You're evaluating each of the buildings and seeing if they apply to your requirements. One thing that we haven't touched on are incentive negotiations. So that third line down, you can see that that's a fairly long bar, and it overlaps a lot of other processes in this. And the reason is you want to engage, usually it's the states and then the local jurisdictions as quickly as possible. And the reason is they want to be aware, but they can also provide some incentive programs. Usually these are, depending on where you are in your growth curve, these can be incubator spaces. This can be introductions to people in the market. This can also be in the form of money, depending on how many jobs and the amount of capital that's going to be invested in that jurisdiction. And so to kind of work through this quickly, the process really involves that analysis and then proving each of the steps along the way, including the preliminary planning. So now you're looking at each of the spaces and you're drawing your requirements into that space. You're looking at how much it's going to cost through the construction estimates, and then you're negotiating the lease from there. So right about the 7th month, you can see where the lease negotiations are finalized. And then this is turned over to an architect, an engineer, and then a general contractor to be built. And that's really the balance of the timeline. And as I mentioned, it takes about 12 to 18 months. There's ways to condense this, but I would say based on my 20 years of experience, this in today's market, this is about what it would take to build space from scratch. The alternative, again, is to find second generation or spec built labs. Next slide, please. So to take it a step further, we thought it would be helpful to understand how much it costs to build lab space in today's environment. And what we find is that the market right now is generally about $325 per square foot. I'm sorry, $350 per square foot. And depending on the market, this can vary, but that $350 per square foot is a good kind of planning estimate for just building out basic lab and office space. And I wanted to show two different scenarios. The scenario on the left is what we call a flex building, building it from a flex type of real estate. And that term flex implies it's an office or a warehouse. It's usually a one-story building. And the ownership really doesn't put a lot of money into their tenant improvement allowances. And so, in other words, they're not going to help finance the cost of a lab build out. So you can see on that left chart, the majority of the costs are really borne by the tenant to build out the space. And here again, can it be done for less? Yes, but what we're seeing in the market right now is that done well, it costs somewhere around $350 per square foot. The alternative to the flex model is the lab model. And in this case, you have a landlord who's committed to providing financing to build these spaces. And then in some cases, they'll provide a base building, lab ready shell is what we call it. And so what that would mean is the HVAC is provided in the space, in the scope, and it's already built into the building. Also, you might find that they're willing to go above their tenant improvement allowance and finance additional dollars. And so you can just see that top bar there with the $75 per square foot is a much less amount for the capital outlay than the flex option. Also, the fundamental difference here is because it is a financing exercise, the rental rates are substantially different. The rental rate for the flex option is going to be far less than the rental rate for the lab option. And so if we look at, for example, the Washington, D.C. and Maryland market, the flex option would cost you approximately $15 per square foot for your rental rate. The lab option would cost approximately $45 per square foot for your rental rate after they've amortized all these costs into it. So hopefully that helps to understand some of the financing structures that you can get from the landlords. So now just to get to the purpose of, I guess, our conversation here, when we were originally brought on, we wanted to talk about the idea of diagnostic labs. And we'll contrast this in just a second with R&D labs. But in most cases, diagnostic labs in the United States have what they call a CLIA certification. And CLIA is a certification that comes from the CDC. And essentially what this certification allows you to do is it provides a facility and a process that reduces the likelihood of contamination of samples of human specimens. And so in that case, the process flow is vital. And so what you really have to do is understand, where your physical barriers are, how to set up your standard operating procedures, and then where your HVAC barriers are in terms of the air pressurizations. And these things will inform how you lay out your space and whether or not spaces will work for you. So as I mentioned previously, most speculatively built labs are laid out for more of an R&D use. And so you need to make some modifications to both usually the walls and doors, as well as the HVAC. But there is still good utility in those labs. Some of the decision drivers for diagnostic labs are the budget, because these are contract driven in most cases. A lot of our clients who are diagnostic labs would prefer to have the initial capital expenses up front and then reduce their ongoing operating expenses, mostly rent in that case. And so they would lean more towards that flex model that we talked about. Or they would look for a second generation lab space. The second decision driver is talent. And in most cases in a diagnostic lab, you need informed, well-educated talent, but you don't need usually PhD quality for your entire staff. And so to be in a scientific market that's just outside of a major hub is usually a good way to balance both the budget and the talent. And finally, the functionality. So I mentioned the CLIA workflows, but also the equipment that diagnostic users use is an important consideration, because usually that's what drives their business. And so looking at that from a footprint standpoint, from how the utilities feed it, as well as potential future growth for the equipment is an important consideration. Next slide, please. So now you look at the R&D side of things. And so if you have an R&D company, something that's a little more, I'll call it traditional in the sense of, pre-revenue type of venture funded company, the decision drivers there are different. In terms of budget, now you're not looking at the ongoing expenses as much as you're looking at mitigating those upfront capital expenses. If you're a pre-revenue venture funded or publicly funded company, you want to put as much of that money into operations as possible. And so said differently, you want to finance everything you can through the landlord in most cases. And so in several of the markets that we talked about earlier, that's achievable. In terms of the second point there, talent, because your driver is getting something in most cases from A to Z through the FDA, it's really important that you have the best in class scientific staff and executives. And to do that, in most cases, you want to locate as close to the center of the scientific hub as possible. And then third, in terms of functionality, you'll be able to find a majority of the lab spaces if you have more of a biotech type use. But if you have any type of, I'll call them more specialized here, not necessarily more specialized, just more nuanced, a heavy chemical lab, or a manufacturing space or animal research spaces, those can be a little harder to find and likely need to be built. So I appreciate everybody's time. I'm happy to entertain any questions. I know we're running a little tight tonight, but please feel free to follow up with me if you do have any.
Perfect. Thanks, Matthew. Okay, so we are going to do a Q&A, but I think first we're going to take about 5 minutes and do just a short break. So if you guys want to grab any snacks or use the restroom or anything like this, then we can reconvene in about 5 minutes and start the Q&A if that's okay. And for the audience in Korea, if you have any questions for the upcoming Q&A, you can post them into the chat and we will read them out as we're able here for our panelists. Thank you. All right, everyone, if we could make our way back to our seats, we'll start the Q&A session, the panel discussion / Q&A. Rami and Louis, if you don't mind. And we have Matt online. Yes, Matt is online. Yes. So we've had some great presentations today so far. And I think it's a great opportunity right now if we have any specific questions for our speakers, whether they're questions about any one of these approaches, or let's say about industry in general right now, building out a lab or figuring out lab space. Please feel free to raise your hand. I'll come over to you, give you the microphone, and you can ask. Low pressure, no pressure situation. You can just have a casual conversation here. Same thing for our audience in Korea. If you guys have any questions, please put them into the chat. Korean or English, we'll translate them for you and get them asked. Okay, here, one in the back.
Yeah. Hi, my name is DK, and I'm from Belite Capital. We're backed by Access Bio, located in New Jersey. We're a diagnosis kit company, and we've just grown very rapidly over the last course of 3 years. And I have a very specific question to Remy from Biolabs. How does the funding work with the venture capitals and angel investors with the startups that are, let's say, in your space?
It really varies. It kind of varies. We do not manage the relations between the companies and the venture capital or angel investors. So I cannot give you like a very clear idea, but what companies try to always find first is non-dilutive funding, because when you have investors, they want to take a chunk, they want to try to control the company. So people are trying to find always non-dilutive funding, which is very limited, very hard to get. Then they go to venture capital and angel investors. There, I do not have a lot of ideas about it. But I know that when the SVB bank problem happened, a lot of our companies are freaking out. I think it's going to be temporary until everybody feels safe, and then they put their money back into the market. But that's all I know about it. Sorry.
So yeah, I guess to be more specific, I was just curious if you guys have like list of active investors that are on your database who applied for it, and you guys connect them with the like who are asking for any further round funds, or is it just open networking that you guys recommend this startup to any in needs of funding to different let's say venture capitals and angel investors?
We have both. So
Both,
actually, we have
okay.
3 ways. One, the companies by themselves, they go find angel investors. Headquarter has some, they're working on something similar where you have investors that they put their name. We're looking at companies that work on this field, and we connect them to them. So yeah, we do have something similar.
Okay, yeah, I guess that was it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if you have questions, I can give you my card.
Sure.
Connect you with the headquarters so you can see how, if you would like, to see what companies are doing and how you can help with the investments.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Did we get any more Q&A from the online participants? No? Okay. So, hi, I'm one of the board members of KAPAL. My name is Mike, and I'll be facilitating with Jake some of the Q&A questions throughout this evening. Again, thank you, Louis, Rami, and Matthew, for the wonderful information, and it's been very enriching just to learn how creative innovation is taking presence in this industry from, what ECL is doing, from a really truly innovative way of doing lab processing and automation through what Biolab LA is doing, to really create that incubator space in this laboratory space, as well as all the way through the end when it comes to, post-development product scaleization, where a company wants to, pretty much be on the brink of IPO, where, Matthew and likes of the world sort of step in and facilitate and really drive that. It's been very educational. So thank you all for that support and that and your time. The series of questions that we have sort of, created for this evening will be, directed, for certain individuals, but again, the rest of the speakers can chime in and add value to answers as we see fit. Along stemming from what DK asked, right? We have a question from the audience, online audience, and it's a little bit more specific, not, from a post-revenue well-established companies like Access Bio, but really truly startup companies that are in the infant and the beginning stages of R&D. The question would be, what can they do to really position themselves to be considered as a serious participant in BioLab LA?
First of all, have a, when you're presenting, the presentation is, first of all, like to be accepted is do a presentation which is about 20 minutes. Part of it should be about the science, and it's gonna be solid science. And I'll give an example of a company that recently presented and had, we didn't accept them because of the science, and then about the business. And we know that a lot of the science that happens is if, we don't know if it's going to work, but always have a contingency plan. So we're gonna try to use, for example, this molecule to target this receptor for cancer. If it doesn't work, we know that other cancers have similar receptor that we can try. Instead of using this drug with this receptor, we're gonna use this different drug, and we have a battery of these. So always have a contingency plan. The second one is going to be for the business. So we have some money, and as long as you can pay the rent, that's fine. But we have some money, but we are planning to contact these funding agencies. We identified these funding agencies to give us money. We have these people on our board of director that will help us progress. This is what we were looking for. The company that recently presented about Iffy Science, the person had a way of making proteins without RNA and in vivo, not like even in vitro or something. And we're like, can you explain? She said, yeah, look, I have patents. So I want to read the patents quickly. It didn't back up his data in any way or form. And then we said, we're sorry. Although we can tell them, hey, come, rent a space for 2 months, 3 months, and then he's going to realize he's doing no research and then leave. But you don't want this. When we have sponsors, partners, they want to look at the company. They want to look at a company that has potential to succeed. So make sure that the science is solid. Make sure that you have a good business plan, and most probably you'll be a BioLabs member.
Thank you for that, Rami. But we're going to hold you to it. You said if you don't have the capability to pay rent, that's okay.
No, I did not say that. I said as long as you can pay the rent, that's fine.
All kidding aside, it's a total joke. Just diving a little deeper, if like you mentioned, and kind of along to what DK is saying, if a infant stage startup company does not have access to funding, and they have a brilliant idea, then is it safe to assume that BioLabs LA will really take them to the next level and make the introductions and really help them secure the funding?
We have some partners like Mission Bio Capital, which is a partner. That depends eventually on, you might have a great idea, let's say in rocket science. You want to make, the rocket 3D printed rocket, but you come to BioLabs LA and we're like, we cannot support it. So the same thing, the partner, like we cannot support it because this is not what we invest in. So as long as it aligns with the investor and they see the value, I think they will invest. So that's a very tricky question. Who's going, just by coming into BioLabs LA and having great science and we have investors does not guarantee success, but it brings you closer to success.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Rami. Let's switch gears a little bit and kind of, go back to the ECLs of the world when it comes to single point location or single point focus of service. In addition to your current service capabilities, the example that you showed within the presentation deck sort of showcases the potential for aspiration capabilities and things like that. do you foresee your company kind of venturing into other modalities, you know, like tissue culture capabilities and things? Can you explain a little more on that front? Please?
Sure. So yeah, in terms of the instrumentation, I mentioned that we have over 240 different types of instrumentation in the lab. We're constantly examining and bringing new ones, especially, you know, clients have interests in terms of a particular platform. If we see that there's a broad applicability for others to use it, we're happy to bring that on and then make it available. Tissue culture is a big one, and we've been working really hard on that. That's slated to come online soon. And once that does, yeah, that to try to have an automated tissue culture scenario. But once, you know, we can solve that problem, it's going to be huge because that will definitely help streamline the process for a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Lois. Just diving a little deeper, you know, when processing specimens for maybe now, or you said you have a location in Singapore, right?
Austin, Texas.
Austin, Texas. Let's say, for example, that you were to secure a client in Korea, right? Do you foresee any compliance or regulatory limitations when it comes to that data being transferred, that specimen being transferred? Have you experienced anything like that, or do you foresee anything of that nature?
Well, currently we're on the R&D setting, and so all of our data is also stored on the Amazon cloud and the AWS. In terms of working with clients internationally, you know, samples that are getting shipped, you know, there's going to be needing to go through customs. That's a typical thing that would happen with ceros anyways. And then, you know, once the process and the samples are being run and it's designed and run, the data goes back into that software platform that they're utilizing so they can analyze the data right there. But so we're not transmitting. This is obviously going to be a different issue for China specifically, where data would have to be, you know, in country. But in terms of working with other countries, we haven't run into that issue just in terms of the specific data problems.
I mean, your company as a concept exists for a reason, right? So it's there. It's to create, you know, time savings, cost savings to the entire ecosystem of how one goes from A through B. You know, have you thought about, you know, specific ways to market to foreign countries, right? If you can share.
Yeah, we are definitely looking to expand. It's obviously amenable to be able to be open to globally, right? So we currently do have clients internationally that are using our system. But obviously for us, it's getting the word out there. A lot of people don't, you know, they don't even know about this concept of a cloud lab, right? It sounds very foreign. They just assume that, oh no, we need to have a lab to be able to do experiments. So it's an education process. And for us, you know, we're in a rapid growth phase right now. And, you know, that's Jake and I's job to get the word out there that this is available and it's online now.
I mean, just to dive a little deeper to that thought would be like, what would be the projected cost savings from a traditional, I'm going to put up my own brick and mortar lab versus CL, you know, from a maybe just a cost savings and a time savings perspective?
No, absolutely. So we actually did a study with a large pharma that does a lot of, you know, research. We did a head-to-head experiments looking at the amount of experiments that are able to run versus utilizing our lab, and found that they were able to do 8 times the number of experiments per day with us versus the traditional method. So there's a lot of savings on that front. And also the method, the cost model we have is a subscription based. And so once you're on there, you have access to all the instrumentation that's there and any new ones that are being brought on. And there's a cost in efficiencies. You don't have to buy instrumentation. All the instruments are qualified every 45 days. So everything, you know that it's up and running, and you don't have to worry about maintenance fees and service fees. You don't have to worry about calibration and so forth. Waste management we handle as well. And on top of that, you don't have to worry about also hiring personnel to be able to run these machines, right? So that's another added cost of labor costs as well. And so in terms of what we roughly compare it to is like a cost of like a medium to large size equipment. You're talking about an annual base would cover unlimited number of experiments that you can run. And so we found that researchers run not into the problem of, oh, I can't do that many experiments. They run into, oh, they're so used to thinking of one experiment at a time and waiting for the data and analyzing it. And it's changing that dynamic of being able to think, it's like, oh, I can line these experiments up. And once they run, the next one goes, and the next one goes. So it's there's no limit to the number that they can do. So
Thank you so much, Louis. I guess this is a more of a general question, but kind of geared towards Rami and Matthew. There are so many foreign companies, laboratories that are interested in, gaining presence here in the U.S., right? If you can speak to us a little bit about how, if you have had that experience, how you sort of vetted them, how you coach them, and in addition to some of the capabilities and values that Sheer or Biolab LA may provide from an infrastructure and organizational support standpoint, like are there additional values such as like visa support and sponsorships and etc. for these research scholars, right? Can you speak to us a little about that? Yeah.
The easy answer is no, Biolabs does not offer support because Biolab is not an employer. So that's going to be up to the employer to do that. So we cannot offer support in that regard. Now, for companies that are trying to come to the United States, first thing I would like to ask them is, what are you trying to come and do? Do you have some drugs that you're trying to market in the US, so you need some FDA clearance? Do you need to run some experiments? Or already all of this is done and you're just coming here and you want start to market the drug? If it's not about drugs, do you have equipments or do you have reagents that you are doing? Do you want to just sell them in the United States? Do you want to manufacture them in the United States and sell them? So what is your, what do you want to do? That's the first thing. The second thing is, do you need space, which is a research space, or do you need something that is much bigger, like manufacturing? If you need something manufacturing, I don't think Biolabs would be a good place for it. It's more of a research. You have to have a research space. You have the like GMP. Biolabs does not have GMP capabilities. But let's say you just need an office for your business development. Biolabs can offer this. You can have a space for business development that will give you a business address, which is something that is needed. If you need to do certain experiments, so you're not heavy on experiments, you just have to do few experiments and submit the drug for the FDA approval. Biolabs can help with this because that's what we have: lab space, certifications, everything. Basically this. So we will look at the company. Everything that is related to basic research, Biolabs can help with this. Even a little bit more on the clinical side. If it's gonna be more on the manufacturing side with no R&D, I think other spaces would be like probably your space would be more helpful for them, or Matthew can come and help them build a space.
Thank you, Rami. How about Matthew?
Yep. No, thank you for the question. It's a good one, and it's an important maybe first step is to set up that team that I talked about. And so when you come to the US, I think having a team of experts that understand your space, understand your business is probably the key element. And those experts I mentioned during the presentation were architects, engineers, general contractors, and the like. But there's also teams of attorneys, accountants, insurance professionals, and those groups can really be instrumental in helping you get set up and helping you to give good guidance and counsel through the process. what a lot of people do is they when they come to the United States, they think that the first thing they need to do is get a physical space, but really they need to set up all of the right paperwork and make sure that you're licensed, make sure that you have all the needed accounting systems in place, et cetera. And so I would say, from my perspective, I don't necessarily coach them through that, but I do have a strong network of experts that fulfill all of those roles. And so that would be my recommendation, is to make sure that you're working with that team of experts, of attorneys, accountants, insurance providers, and real estate, so that you have a good base.
Thank you, Matthew. Just one last segment would be, how about HEN, like the universities that are part of the higher education network? Any affiliations that can really drive client and partners within your organizations?
Well, the majority of biolabs is with partners. So we have partnership with the Lundquist Institute. We have partnership with that's here in LA, and with Tufts, with Ipsen, Langone, and New York. So yeah, we do have a lot of partnerships that will help us to progress the research and to progress people's access to collaborations.
And for ECL, we do have academic partnerships. So the one that I can speak to is Carnegie Mellon University. We have a partnership with them to build out a cloud lab specifically for them on their site. It kind of stemmed from when the pandemic hit, where their students and the teachers all of a sudden didn't have access and couldn't do research, and the classes were just kind of stuck. They reached out to us to try to utilize our system, and that expanded to the point where the president found out all these people are, utilizing our software and using our lab. They decided, you know what, we want a lab for ourselves, a cloud lab that it'll be on site at CMU. But we'll build it out and do all the software integration and utilizing their platform, their machines, code it, and then be able for them to then control it. So we do that as well, build out custom labs for institutions that have a desire for that.
I think it's important to recognize the need for importance, leverage technology, but really helping these companies or partners establish a legitimate presence of prestige in with those partnerships with HEN. I believe we have one more question.
So I'm Joseph from Celamix US, an NGS target enrichment kit company. Is there any opportunity to collaborate with BioLabs LA?
So they're selling kits for and they want to see. That is a question that headquarters can answer best in terms of sponsorship. So if they want to sponsor the company or the site, what I can tell them, first of all, because we had something similar, if they want to ship reagents to the United States, it has to go through a vetted clearance from the customs, because one kit had 0.1% BSA, bovine serum albumin, and it got stopped at the customs, and it cost more than $700 just to clear a vial this big. So these companies that want to bring reagents to the United States have to check the list of what is allowed and what is not allowed to be brought to the US first of all. And then they can talk with the headquarters. They deal with all the sponsorships regarding that.
Well, Mr. Sintata, did I say that correctly? Mr. Duary and Mr. Brady, thank you for your time this afternoon. I'll hand it back to Jake.
Yeah, that was excellent. Enjoyed the entire session. I hope you guys did too. We're still going to be here for a minute afterwards, but I do think we have some closing remarks via a recording here. So maybe the panelists, you guys want to come over here so you're not feeling awkward over there.
Hello, I am Sunman Park, the head of Kitty USA. I would like to sincerely thank everyone who participated in today's seminar. I hope this seminar was a valuable time for pharmaceutical companies, bio companies, and in vitro diagnostic device companies using lab. KIDI USA is located in Cambridge, Boston area. Due to geographical constraints, we do not have a base in the Western United States and rely on the assistance of outside experts. In particular, KAPAL, including Kim Hyun-jong, CEO of KAPAL California, has been helping us a lot. I would like to express my sincere appreciation at this opportunity. Going forward, KIDI USA will continue to work with professional organizations, law firms, consulting groups, and more in the United States to provide exceptional seminars. If you have any good ideas, please feel free to suggest them to KIDI USA. Finally, I sincerely thank the wonderful speakers today, and everyone who prepared, and all the attendees who took the time to participate. Thank you.
All right, I think our president, Mr. Kim's going to have a final word right now.
안녕하세요. 김현종입니다. Thank you for attending today's seminar. This is Hyunjong Kim, President of KAPAL California. Thank you for every KAPAL board members so holding this awesome event. So I wanna kind of make a announcement for our next seminar. And our next seminar is healthcare with artificial intelligence. The purpose of this seminar is to highlight the impact of AI on healthcare and its potential for future development. In recent years, as you may know, AI has been increasingly used in healthcare for various tasks, including disease diagnostics, patient monitoring, and the drug discovery. So I think machine learning can analyze a large amount of medical data to identify a pattern and make accurate prediction. So throughout this seminar, we will try to share a very valuable information about AI and the combination of healthcare systems. So I hope all of you attend on our next seminar. Maybe gonna be end of June. Maybe we'll keep post everything on our LinkedIn website as well. Thank you.
So that's going to wrap it up for us today. And just one final announcement, since we are a smaller group, there is a dinner afterward at Maple Block. What's that? Okay, so after I say this, we're going to go over here and take a photo together for those of you that are here. So I almost forgot about that. But if anybody's interested in staying after for a meal together, we can certainly facilitate that and have further discussions. I know at least Louis will be joining us too. I don't know if Rami's able to, but we can see what's possible. So if you guys are interested, stick around, talk to us. Otherwise, let's go over here and take a photo together. Thanks, guys.